Good morning everyone, this is Mike.
And good morning, this is Pauline.
And we're starting this morning with the Society News for Friday the 29th of March 2018. We start with Tuesday. There will be a coffee morning held in support of the Society on Tuesday the 3rd of April at the Post Office in Knighton. All are welcome from 10:30am until 12 noon. The Ride Swimming Group will be swimming this coming Tuesday the 3rd of April at the Waterside Pool in Ryde. The swimming group has sole use of the pool during the session and there are lifeguards in attendance. If you are interested in joining the group, please contact the Society to advise us of your swimming ability and for us to advise the Waterside Pool.
On Wednesday, the weekly coffee morning will be held at Millbrook House this Wednesday, the 4th of April. The coffee mornings are not just for blind and partially sighted people. Anybody can come along and have a cup of coffee or tea, as well as a piece of cake. The Society Coffee Morning will be joined by the Macular Degeneration Group for their monthly meeting.
On Thursday, the Thursday Social Group are meeting on Thursday the 5th of April at Millbrook House. The group meets from 10:30am until 2pm. You can have a chat and a knit if you wish. Then later in the afternoon, volunteers come in and read to the group from different topics.
And in other news, following feedback from the member survey last year, we have 3 new activities taking place in the next few months. On Monday the 23rd of April, there will be a trip to Rosemary Vineyard for a tour and tasting session. A 6-week yoga class will be starting on Tuesday the 17th of April at Millbrook House. And a 2-hour pottery session will be taking place on Monday the 21st of May at Town Quay in Newport. For further information, please contact Laura Jasper on 522205 or email members@iwsb.org.uk.
Are you a crime fiction fan or a budding author? How would you like to combine the two? Join international best-selling authors Carol and Bob Bridgestock for an evening entitled Murder Behind the Scenes. The event will showcase the television programme Written in Blood, episode 7, which featured R.C. Bridgestock. After the programme there will be a question and answer session over a drink and nibbles. The event is being held at the Riverside Centre, the Quay, Newport, on Thursday the 19th of April 2018 at 6pm. As well as Carol and Bob's presence, there will also be entertainment from Emily Scotcher, professional makeup artist Pamela Clare, and Vectus Radio's Maggie and Calvin Curry. Tickets are £6 each, which includes a drink and nibbles. Book now by calling Chris Kane on 522205 or email admin@iwsb.org.uk.
Southern Vectis has announced that it will be operating the Helping Hand scheme on its buses. Helping Hand is an award-winning scheme which allows the holder to discreetly and directly advise of any assistance they may require via information cards. The card holds a brief written instruction for the driver that can be shown upon boarding the bus, such as, "Please call out my stop" for buses without audio announcements. The driver is made aware of the customer's needs or requirements without the customer having to verbally communicate it. The service user-led scheme is now being used off the bus as well, in taxis, shops and leisure establishments like the cinema. If you or someone you know would benefit from using one of these cards, please call 0330 05 39182 or visit www.buses.co.uk/helping hand.
Local volunteers from the Guide Dogs charity will be visiting a number of venues over the next few months, talking about the work of the charity and how you can be involved. They will be at Cowes Library on the 21st of April, Sandown Library on the 23rd of June, Ryde Library on the 21st of July, and Ventnor Library on the 18th of August. All the library venue times will be 10:30 a.m. until 2:30 p.m. You can also find them at Riverfest on Newport Quay on the 19th of May, 11 a.m. till 3 p.m, and the Isle of Wight Community Club Open Day at Park Road in Cowes on August the 27th from 12 noon onwards.
You are invited to join us for a quiz night on Friday the 4th of May at New Close Cricket Ground, Blackwater Road, Newport, in aid of Sight for Wight. The doors open at 7 p.m, with the quiz starting at 7:30 p.m. There will be prizes for the winning team, a raffle and a lucky dip. The bar will be open for refreshments. The price is £2 per person in teams of 4. Registration is required in advance by calling 527957. Leave a message if no answer, or email Tracy, Tracy, 71, Pete, Pete 57 at hotmail.co.uk.
And we now move on to the scaffolding news, of which there is quite a long list. In the Bay and Ventnor area, there is currently scaffolding at Wight City, Culver Parade, Sandown, Perone Way and Downsview Corner at Sandown, 38 Melville Street, Sandown, Shanklin Library, Victoria Avenue, Shanklin, Not Just Demin, 75 High Street, Sandown, the corner of Trinity Road and Madeira Road, Ventnor, 1 Boniface Road and into Trinity Road, Ventnor, 52 High Street, Ventnor, and 31 Pier Street, Ventnor.
New scaffolding is due up at 64 High Street, Shanklin from the 16th of April, 3 Downsview, Sandown from the 27th of April. There are currently hoardings at Wight City, Culver Parade, Sandown. New hoardings are due up at Premier Inn Esplanade, Sandown from the 16th of April. There are currently skips at 1 Melville Street, Sandown, 40 South Street, Ventnor, Sandown Pier Esplanade, Sandown, 40 South Street, Ventnor. New skips are due at 31 Garfield Road, Shanklin from the April the 10th.
And the Cowes area, there is currently scaffolding at 12A Gordon Road, Cowes, Staplers and Green, 13 Shooters Hill, Cowes. New scaffolding is due up at Totty's Fish and Chips, High Street, Cowes, from the 26th of March, and we're waiting new dates for that. Grace's Bakery and Pascal Atke, High Street, Cowes, from 9th of April. There are currently hoardings at 93 High Street, Cowes. There are currently skips at 38 St Andrews Street, Cowes, 92 Newport Road, Cowes, 55 Clarence Road at East Cowes.
And in the Newport area, there is currently scaffolding at 38 Key Street, Newport, 18 Lugley Street, Newport, Readers, 33 South Street, Newport, Bryston Viaduct, Military Road, Bryston, the Waverley, 2 Clatterford Road, Newport, to the rear of St Thomas's Church, St Thomas's Square, Newport, Bats Wing, Church Hollow, Godshill, St Cross House, St Cross Lane, Newport, Age UK, 169 High Street, Newport, 3 and 4 Holyrood Street, Newport, 33 Clifford Street, Newport, and 1 Key Street, Newport. New scaffolding is due up at Domino's, St James Street, Newport from the 23rd of April, and there are currently skips at 66 Upper St James's Street, Newport, and 3 and 4 Lee Bank, Chale.
In the Ryde area, there is currently scaffolding at the Star Inn, High Street Ryde, Royal Victoria Arcade, Union Street Ryde, 21 High Street Ryde, Rose Court, George Street Ryde, 40 Union Street Ryde, 10 John Street Ryde, 78 George Street Ryde. New scaffolding is due up at 23 to 23A Union Street Ryde from the 9th of April. There are currently skips at 46 Park Road Ryde, Etherin Newlands, St Helens.
And in the West Wight area, there is currently scaffolding at Everson's Funeral Directors, Broadway, Totland, and Brooklands, Queen's Road, Freshwater.
And that concludes the scaffolding. This week's InTouch is this week's episode. Professor Pete Kofi from UCL talks about his stem cell trial results and explains the background to the trials and the chances of the treatment being available as a cure for macular degeneration in the near future. Kathy Yelf, CEO of Macular Disease Society, talks to Peter Wight about the impact stem cell therapy that could have for the majority of people with both the dry and wet forms of AMD. We pay tribute to Thena Heschel, the former long-term producer of InTouch, who blazed a trail for blind people and women in equal measure.
And now for the county press. The headline is Mum's Worst Nightmare, an article by Molly Mansfield. A mum of 6 has released harrowing photographs of her teenage son at death's door to show the true effects of meningitis. Ben Taylor, aged 18, was fighting for his life just days after he complained of a sore throat, after he actually contracted bacterial meningitis. Ben of Longmead Road Ryde was rushed to St Mary's Hospital, Newport, in a critical condition on Saturday evening, March the 17th. But his brave mum, Ricky, aged 37, has released the images of her son in hospital to show other families just how quickly meningitis can take hold of a healthy person. She is now trying to raise awareness to the dangers of bacterial meningitis. Ricky, a full-time mum, said, Ben deteriorated so quickly. Initially he was complaining he had a sore throat, and then 3 days later he's fighting for his life with meningitis. I called for an ambulance because Ben was unresponsive, and then hours later he was put into an induced coma. I took these photographs to show people that meningitis is not always just a rash and doesn't just occur in young children. He looked dead in these photos. He was in a coma. He was grey and he was hooked up to so many wires that were just keeping him alive. I had to share them because it's the reality behind meningitis, and if these photographs can encourage people to understand the signs and symptoms of the illness, it is worth it. Ricky said, on Wednesday evening he was complaining his throat was hurting, so we booked a doctor's appointment for the next morning. At the appointment we were told he was fine, so we went home and he got a lot of rest, vitamins and fluids. On the run-up to being hospitalised, Ben was vomiting constantly, tired and had a sore throat and felt cold a lot. But then he started deteriorating, and by Saturday night he was in the hospital being hooked up to life support. Initially, because he went to the pub the night before, I thought maybe his drink was spiked, but hearing it was meningitis was even more of a shock to me. I always thought that having meningitis meant you had a rash, but Ben has proved that wrong. I want as many people as possible to know the symptoms of meningitis and that it's not just a rash, so this doesn't happen to anyone else's son. Ben remains in hospital but is on the road to recovery. Ricky told the county press, Ben's been on the ward for a few days now. He was reviewed today, Tuesday, but has to stay in as he has an infection in his spinal fluid. He is doing well, has some hearing loss, but no brain damage, and is on the mend.
And our second headline for this week is Vandalism blow to young players. Vandals have damaged the Rue Valley football pitch for the third time since Christmas. The pitch at Watcombe Bottom on Whitball Road, Ventnor, is home to Rue Valley Youth Football Club, which has 125 members, while many more players train there weekly. The damage to the ground caused by vehicles on the pitch has been a devastating blow for the team, which has suffered an expensive season so far, with lots of unexpected costs and things needing replacing. Organisers are now desperately trying to raise funds to erect fencing around the pitches to prevent them being driven over. Jess Cutler, youth team secretary, said, "Being repeatedly hit by vandalism is a massive blow. We're entirely run on donations, and the children's subs, which we try to keep as low as possible, as we feel sport and being part of a team or club is really important for young people. It not only keeps them fit, but teaches them valuable things such as respect and how to work together. Unfortunately, since Christmas we have been blighted by vandalism. Our pitch was driven on for the third time in so many months. The first 2 times the damage was caused by a car driving on it. We hoped to stop the problem by erecting a chain across the access lane, which seemed to work, but the latest damage was caused by a motorbike, which drove through a gap in the fence. We need to enclose the whole pitch. The team is hosting a touring club from Herefordshire for the first time soon, and is hoping the pitch will be in good enough condition. The children are very active in the club's fundraising efforts and have recently been bagpacking, taken part in the sponsored events, sold raffle tickets and run stalls at community events. A crowdfunding page has been set up at justgiving.com/crowdfunding/Rue Valley. A jumble sale has been organised for Saturday, April the 14th at Ventnor Baptist Church from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. A quiz night is being held at the Mill Bay Inn on Wednesday, April the 11th.
And this article is headed Ryde School's boarding house given the go-ahead. Plans to build a new boarding house at Ryde School have been approved. The application was approved by 7 votes to 5 at a meeting of the Isle of Wight Council Planning Committee. Revised plans with changes to the design of the boarding house were submitted to the council in December after the authority refused the original proposals. Objections were lodged by Ryde Town Council, which warned the building would overlook neighbouring properties and cause significant harm to the Ryde Conservation Area. The school is surrounded by listed buildings and protected trees, although the Isle of Wight Council's ecology and conservation officers raised no objections. Andrew Wight, speaking on behalf of residents, said, "Planning law states development must preserve or enhance the character and appearance of conservation areas. These revisions do not address the fundamental issue a 3-storey building on higher ground above Spencer Road will dominate and overwhelm properties and the conservation area. The proposed building is far longer and deeper than any of its historic neighbours. This thing is wrong on many levels. It's too high, too bulky and fundamentally in the wrong design." Councillor Adrian Axford proposed redevelopment of other sites in Ryde as an alternative, including the Abingdon Lodge Hotel, Milford House and the Royal Yacht Hotel. Speaking on behalf of the school, planning agent Martha James, said the boarding house could only be good for the prosperity of Ryde, with parents and students spending money in the town.
Objections fail to stop huge waterfront plan. Plans to radically reshape Medina Yard at Cowes have been given the green light by the Isle of Wight Council, despite strong objections from residents, councillors and local stakeholders. The application was approved by 7 votes to 5 on the condition phases 1 and 4 of the development run parallel to preserve marine industry at the site. That means the creation of the marine employment space, which is phase 4, will have to be given full planning permission before any work can begin at the site. The planning committee, which met on Tuesday, heard the huge redevelopment by the Harrison Trust would provide up to 535 homes and up to 18,630 square metres for business and public space, landscaping, the reconstruction of the sea wall, and a new public slipway would be built, as well as 242 basement car parking spaces. The application also sought listed building consent for the refurbishment of the hammerhead crane, which will form a focal centrepiece of the site's regeneration. 8 objectors spoke against the plans, including Councillor Paul Fuller, who said local GP practices may be forced to raise the drawbridge and refuse more patients if the development went ahead. Car parking was also raised as a potential problem. Councillor Laura P.C. Wilcox said, "I have petitions and 307 emails from tired, stressed residents who at midnight are still trying to park in their area. Young mums with tiny babies, elderly residents, their stories are heartbreaking. There will be no affordable housing on the site due to high rents in Cowes. However, the Harrison Trust will fund £3 million of affordable housing elsewhere on the island." Councillor Jeff Brodie said, "We are being told they are going to fund affordable housing somewhere else, but we don't know where that is. There is no land allocated. It's just pie in the sky for those people on the island who need homes, who are homeless, people who are living in overcrowded or low-quality fundraising." However, some councillors spoke in favour of the plan. Cabinet Member for Planning and Housing, Councillor Barry Abraham, said, "Over half the available accommodation on the site is empty. Anyone visiting the site immediately notes the businesses occupy very low-quality, inexpensive accommodation. As with other brownfield sites in Cowes Harbour, the site requires significant new investment. The existing accommodation is clearly substandard and dilapidated, with little incentive provided for any future investment. I do not honestly believe we are going to get anything better than this."
This is an article by David Newball, and the heading is Academy's Enterprise Trust, AET, NIMBYism, claim rejected. The chief executive of the Academy's Enterprise Trust, AET, has been slammed after he accused campaigns to save schools struggling because of unfilled places as a form of NIMBYism. In an article in the Times Educational Supplement, Julian Drinkle questioned whether saving schools such as Sandown Bay Academy was a good use of public money, prompting a furious response from island campaigners who had battled to save the school from closure. As previously reported, AET planned to shut the school last year and merge it with Ryde Academy. Following lobbying of the government, plans to convert Sandown Bay Primary, incorporating the Sandown Bay Academy site, to a through school were approved by the government. In his article, published in the Bible for educationalists, the Times Educational Supplement, Mr Drinkle cited Sandown Bay Academy as an example of an institution where pupil numbers had halved over a 5-year period, questioning whether saving them was an effective use of public money. Ireland Independent Councillor for Sandown North, Debbie Andre, said, "This is further proof, if proof were needed, of the blatant disregard of AET and its management for the realities of running an educational facility where the emphasis should be on providing high-quality education for its pupils. The fact that Mr Drinkle can accuse parents, pupils and staff of NIMBYism in their campaigning for a high-quality local school for local children beggars belief. His comments should also be read closely by staff, pupils and parents by AET's remaining school on the island, Ryde Academy, and will hopefully be a further nail in the coffin for the future of AET on our island." Isle of Wight Labour's parliamentary spokesperson Julian Critchley said, "AET announced it would close Sandown Bay Academy last year, claiming the number of students made it unviable. At the time, Sandown Bay was a larger than national average school, which was being run down by AET through consistent underfunding and inadequate management, which had seen several changes of head teacher." Julian Critchley added, "Sandown Bay Academy, the community it serves, and indeed the whole Isle of Wight have had to survive the predations and incompetence of AET. Sandown Bay nevertheless remains a popular and historic school which has an essential role in the community. For Mr Drinkle to suggest the community is engaged in NIMBYism for trying to protect the school which serves its children is outrageous. But then, given it was another ex-AET executive who accused islanders of being inbred, perhaps we shouldn't be surprised at the utterly repugnant attitude which seems to be so prevalent within the well-paid executives at AET."
Tips shorter hours slammed. The summer opening times at Limbottom Tip have been slashed by 35 hours a week, or 5 hours a day. The revised opening hours introduced at the start of October last year will remain in force, meaning the centre will remain open between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. 7 days a week. Last summer, the Household Waste Recycling Centre on Bridlesford Road opened every day between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. Meanwhile, the Tip at Afton will open for 3 days between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m, a cut of 15 hours. There are now fears the cut in hours will lead to an increase in fly tipping, particularly on nearby Brading Down Road. Former Ryde Town Councillor David Woodward branded the decision self-defeating and very short-sighted. He said, "Lots of working people will now not be able to go on their way to work. There will be more queuing and sooner or later there will be a bad accident on that road." The revised hours form part of plans to save the council £252,000 over 3 years. Isle of Wight Council Cabinet member for Waste Management, Councillor Michael Merwill, said officers analysed the footfall data for both sites and explored how other local authorities in the UK ran their sites. The proposed option met the needs of as many users as possible, and it has been largely successful.
Jim's Dancing with Joy. Red Funnel's dancing gym has been crowned Visit England's tourism superstar and won a dream family holiday. Jim O'Reilly, a Red Funnel employee who uses his own dance moves as he directs cars on and off the ferries at Southampton, came first in the national competition organised by the Daily Mirror. Jim received 64% of the 20,000 votes, the most cast in the history of the competition. He beat 9 others to the top spot. As a thank you for his service, Red Funnel also rewarded Jim, who was nominated by Visit Isle of Wight, with a £5,000 dream holiday to a destination of his choice. Jim, 53, said, "I can't believe I've actually won. It's such an amazing feeling. I'm so grateful for all the support and would like to thank every single person who was kind enough to vote for me. Hopefully, I will be able to thank many people in person when they travel this Easter."
A man is hurt as a bus window is broken. A passenger was hit on the head by a rock thrown through a Southern Vectis bus window on Saturday. County Press photographer Paul Blackley was travelling on Route 7 service just after 11:30 p.m. when the incident occurred. Mr. Blackley received a small cut on the head while other passengers were covered in glass from the shattered window. PC Martin Edgerton, who is investigating the incident, said, "This was a dangerous and irresponsible act that could have resulted in serious injuries to the passenger, who thankfully was only left with a cut to his head. This type of behaviour will not be tolerated, and I am keen to hear from anyone who has information as to who was responsible." Police said a 17-year-old boy was arrested after a spate of criminal damage to vehicles in the freshwater area. Officers are investigating 2 separate reports of criminal damage in the area on Saturday night. A spokesperson said, "We received a report shortly after 10:50 p.m. 2 cars had been damaged by a group of youths in Upper Princes Road and School Green Road. One car had its wing mirror damaged, the second had its rear window smashed. A 17-year-old boy was subsequently arrested on suspicion of causing criminal damage and has been released from custody without charge, but remains under investigation." At 11:30 p.m, a piece of concrete was thrown at the window of a bus shortly after it had stopped in Heathfield Road. A 49-year-old man who was a passenger was left with a cut on his head after the window smashed.
And this is about a Boost Keys's Fund by bidding. Keys's Kindness, an Ireland charity which aims to help young children in need, Crack a Smile, is hosting an online skills auction from 6 p.m. tomorrow, Friday, until Saturday, April the 7th. Businesses and individuals have donated their skills to be auctioned off throughout the week. Prizes range from an hour of gardening by Green Fingers to a child's party package with DJ Phil Lynch worth £220. Lucky winners could bag an afternoon tea at Albert Cottage, a photo shoot by Gibson Photography, a bespoke item of furniture built by Men's Shed, or flooring or carpet to be fitted professionally by NSR Flooring worth £500. The list of prizes is available on Facebook at Keys's Kindness Skill Auction, where people can also bid. Bidders can also text or WhatsApp on 07384424416 or email kezzykindness@yahoo.com. The Kezzy Kindness team, Christine O'Brien, Tracy Call, Kim Lloyd and Nikki Flux Edmonds, have thanked the businesses which have donated. Kezzy's Kindness helps children in memory of Kezia Flux Edmonds. One of the team said, "That's what Kezia was like. She was always giving gifts and trying to make others happy." Funds go towards new coats or shoes when parents are struggling, as well as day trips and fun days. Money from the auction will go towards helping Ireland children throughout the year, particularly at times such as Christmas and the school holidays. The charity has received 123 donated Easter eggs, meaning 123 children across the island will receive a chocolate treat.
A plea to help build a wellbeing centre. Wessex Cancer Trust has today, Thursday, launched an urgent appeal to create a new cancer wellbeing centre on the Isle of Wight. This year the charity needs to raise £100,000 so it can continue to provide practical and emotional support for thousands of islanders affected by cancer. The charity has been forced to find a new home following the redevelopment of its leased building in Lugley Street at Newport, and the new centre, which will be created in an adjoining building, requires extensive renovation. By raising £100,000 through its Building for the Future appeal, the charity will be able to create a purpose-built community hub from which it can continue to provide services such as professional counselling, drop-in sessions and complementary therapies. Plans for the new centre include the creation of 3 new treatment rooms, a quiet befriending area, a community area for groups to meet, as well as more flexible spaces to host new classes and activities. Wessex Cancer Trust Chief Executive Kate Allen said, "A diagnosis is devastating to a person, but also their family and friends. Our Cancer Wellbeing Centre in Newport is a place where anyone can go and get some help. Whether that's advice on how to pay the bills, professional counselling, or relaxing therapies, there is a listening ear for anyone who needs it. We hope the community will support the appeal to help us create a wonderful new space for people affected by cancer." The charity is urging islanders to get behind the cause by raising money however they can, from making a donation online to fundraising in their communities and volunteering. The Island branch has also announced its first major fundraiser, the Brick by Brick Challenge, inviting 50 businesses, community groups, schools or individuals to raise at least £500 for the cause. All those that hit the target will have their name printed on a brick in the new centre, and the organisation that raises the most will be invited to open it. Wessex Cancer Trust will also host a number of fundraising events throughout the year. Centre user Torrey Coles, who was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 26, said, "A new island wellbeing centre would ensure cancer patients and their families can continue to access support services on their doorstep in a place that's warm and welcoming, and that is so important." The charity is holding an Alice in Wonderland themed egg hunt on Easter Monday in Parkhurst Forest from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m.
Yurt glamping project proposed. A new glamping site has been proposed for land south of New Close Cricket Ground, Newport. The luxury camping site would see a low-density development of glamping pods, as well as a reception block, washing facilities and car parking. Plans include 3 zones: oak yurts, pond yurts and woodland yurts. A new pond/lake has been proposed for the western edge of the site. The site is a former Christmas tree plantation, with the majority still covered with spruce trees. The deadline for commenting on the application with the Isle of Wight Council Planning Department is April the 13th.
Pew comeback to divide Tories. A simmering tension in the Islands Conservative Association resurfaced this week when a senior councillor launched a stinging attack on a former Isle of Wight Council leader. A bid by David Pugh to be elected the association's chairman tonight, which is Thursday, would divide and could destroy the Island Conservative Association. The Isle of Wight Council's Newport West Conservative councillor Chris Whitehouse has claimed, saying the legacy was poisonous. He said he would find it impossible to serve as a Conservative if Mr Pugh was elected. The bid follows news. The current chairman of the association, Councillor Ian Ward, who is the Isle of Wight Council's cabinet member for transport, is to step down from the role. Mr Pugh is one of 2 candidates vying for the chairmanship. The other is former Cowes Mayor David Walters. Mr. Pugh, who works for a mainland public affairs consultancy, told the county press, "Councillor Whitehouse speaks for himself. This is a matter for him." Mr. Pugh became embroiled in rows with the island's former MP Andrew Turner, firstly at an infamous Valentine's Day ball in 2010, and later over the former MP's expenses and Mr. Turner's involvement in the controversy surrounding the future of Island Line rail franchise. Councillor Whitehouse said, "David Pugh left the Conservatives with a toxic image. He not only lost his own seat, but also cost us control of the council in 2013, so poisonous was his reputation, and he damaged the life chances of a generation of children during the earlier school's reorganisation. The electorate would never forgive or forget if Island Conservatives were to allow this divisive individual to return to and take control of County Hall through the back door by being elected association chairman, in which position the rules would allow him to attend all meetings of Conservative members of the Isle of Wight Council and put him in charge of the selection process for all councillor candidates in the future." Councillor Whitehouse added, "Along with many councillor colleagues, I would find it impossible to continue to serve as Conservative if the man who wrecked the island's education system so comprehensively were elected association chairman. We're still undoing the damage he did. Damage so bad the entire island school system was put into special measures by the national government. This wouldn't be a joke. It will be a nightmare and would divide and risk completely destroying the Conservative Association." The leader of the Isle of Wight Council's Conservative group and authority leader, Councillor Dave Stewart, said as long as the association followed the democratic process, whoever was elected deserved its support. He said, "One likes to think everybody, as they get older, becomes a little wiser. My view is, we should do the best for the island." The AGM of the Isle of Wight Conservative Association is being held in Newport tonight, which is Thursday.
And this is an article by Megan Baines, Spotlight on Youth. Students design the future. More than 120 young people from across the Isle of Wight gathered at Cowes Yacht Haven to discuss the island's future. Young islanders provided the Isle of Wight Council with an insight into their hopes and aspirations at the authority's Regeneration Youth Conference. They were asked to redesign, redevelop or regenerate a key island site, including Sandown Seafront, Newport Harbour, Newport Town Centre and Ryde Esplanade. Senior councillors and council leaders were on hand to answer questions from the teams. 15-year-old Megan Turner from the Island Free School said, "It was a really great opportunity to work with others and to think about the possibilities for the island's future. I really enjoyed making a regeneration plan for Ryde Esplanade. Business leaders including Rob Ketley of Winwood Engineering, Rookley, and Mark Jackson of Cowes call centre firm Ascentos took part in a question and answer session. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation, UKSA and Youth MP Joe Davis spoke about island life and sustainability, while Sandown Company Articology gave a presentation about how buildings and offices could be inspired by the natural world. Council leader, Councillor Dave Stewart said, "I was really impressed to see so many young people from across the island. I thought there were some brilliant ideas which we can take forward."
And on that happy note, we are told we have to say goodbye to you. So bye-bye from Mike.
And bye-bye from Pauline.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Good morning, everyone. This is the County Press for March the 30th. And this is Barry reading
And Linda. Good morning.
We will start with a letter from Mrs. C.G. of Totland. And she says, "I have a beautiful and amazing son. He unfortunately suffers with some behavioural issues, diagnosis unknown at present. But with the help, supports and care from St Saviour's RC Primary School, the Island Learning Centre, ILC, and other outside agencies, that is Tracy Castle, Bernardo's, my son has come on leaps and bounds in understanding and coping with this. Every single member of staff at St Saviour's has shown nothing but genuine love and support to us as a family, and the pupils are a credit to both the school and their parents for their kind and understanding nature towards my son. Along with the school, the staff of the ILC worked wonders in implementing lots of strategies and coping mechanisms for my son that the school is continuing to use. It appears to be working very well. So in this day and age, where negativity is rife, I think it is important for us to thank those who truly have and do bend over backwards to help young ones cope and grow to be better people. I am incredibly proud of my son, but also of the school he attends and the staff within, and commend them and the ILC wholeheartedly. Thank you all so much for giving us back our happy boy.
And now from June Ring of Yarmouth. Island patients receiving radiotherapy on the mainland until, I think, the late 1990s, stayed in an NHS facility Monday to Friday throughout their treatment. When this facility was closed and we found that fares could not be paid by the NHS, a public meeting was held attended by Andrew Turner and several councillors. Patients and carers spoke of the hardship and difficulties incurred when travelling for up to 6 weeks. It was after this meeting that the Isle of Wight Council announced it would take on the reimbursement of the boat fare for these patients. This was discretionary, not mandatory. We were very grateful, and I know that hundreds of people who benefit from this were too. I understand it's Her Majesty's Government who have decided we do not meet the criteria to be recognised for island status. Perhaps if they could be persuaded we are an island, the council would receive the added allowance and could go back to reimbursing the fares. All that time ago, I don't think anyone could see the economic climate as it is today. We need something done, as I do know people who are saying they could not afford £100 a week. For example, bus and boat from the West Wight. Do they still have the operation? Will accommodation be found? Being diagnosed with cancer is bad enough without all these added worries.
And now a letter from J. Richards of East Cowes. On rereading the article Road to Nowhere, Injunction and Threat regarding Pan Estate, it reminds me of Groundhog Day. A very similar situation has been ongoing for the past 10 years over the Kingston Link Road in East Cowes. This was supposed to have been done within 18 months of commencement of building in the Hawthorne Meadows development. Excuse after excuse, promise after promise, but still the remaining 100 m of the road has not been completed. Barrett's knows the Isle of Wight Council is ineffectual in making any conditions upon approval of planning matters stick. They care not for their obligations to the community or inconvenience caused to them. In particular, the residents of Kingston Road and Minerva Road are at a loss as to why they should have their full and gravel lorries with their fully laden loads, especially first thing on a cold morning, negotiating their narrow, well-used roads when they should be using the link road. So come on, Barretts, play the game, not your game, and get this road completed and operational.
From Tom Bodman of Shanklin. Nick Sewell, in letters of the 23rd of March, seeks to castigate MP Bob Seeley for voting in favour of applying means testing to school meals. Does he think Prince George should receive this benefit? He further asks, how does Bob sleep at night? Surely those feckless men who father children knowing they cannot support them without the taxpayers' aids should be the sleepless ones. It would seem not to be hunger that keeps them awake. As an 86-year-old pensioner who worked all my life, I still pay approximately £1,000 a year income tax, while others on benefits can receive £20,000, £23,000 in London, and pay no tax. Would Mr. Sewell care to take up my case with Comrade Corbyn?
And a letter from Sharon Kerrison of Newport. Show more care on the bus. The majority of our bus drivers are considerate and caring, allowing passengers to sit down before moving off. However, there are drivers who just do not care. In November 2015, my elderly mother was left with serious painful injuries after being thrown onto the metal railings because the driver did not wait. This resulted in us making a compensation claim. One would think lessons had been learned, but no. I recently boarded a bus at St Mary's to Cowes. A lady got on after me, and yet again the driver did not wait for her to sit down, and she was thrown on top of me. She landed very heavily on my left arm, shoulder, causing me a lot of discomfort and pain.
From Patricia Jefferson of Hemel Hempstead. In reply to Susan Powell on parking charges and second home owners, letters of the 16th of March, I quite agree. Ripped off again. But yes, we do pay full rates. We have a flat on the island which we use for about 6 weeks when we have family commitments. We love the island, but we have found in the past hotels are expensive and some are below standard. And what would you all do without us? We pay full rates and claim few of your services. If we didn't, you would probably be in trouble. So no cracks about the Bahamas. On the rare occasion when I did want something from the council, I asked if they had any suggestions for what to do with food rubbish when you wouldn't be around on the particular pick-up day, as would some holiday makers renting property. They eventually replied to me, "Take it home with you." Well, thanks a lot.
And from Alan Rowe of Wootton, I remember well the characters of Brian Greening's article, with Harry Stumpy Orchard, Theo the tramp of legendary odour, and chain-smoking kindly Dr. Heathcote, who regularly called to check me when I was laid up for weeks with a badly infected leg injury from a fall in the school, National Church of England, playground, requiring me to have frequent and greatly dreaded hot kaolin poultices applied. No penicillin in those days, 1943. I also recall other characters such as Putty Andrews in the market St James's Square, who instead of a proper haircut would run lighted matches across his head to singe his hair, which was grey and stubbly. And no socks, he was always a sight of great curiosity. And there was Fred Stevens, who would respond to calls of "Yo-ho, Fred," with a loud "yo-ho" in return, and was a bait for good-humoured and innocent mockery by school kids who saw him as Newport's town simpleton, probably unjustly. Other perhaps lesser characters entrenched in my store of nostalgic memories and worthy of mention must include diminutive blacksmith Harry Prince in his C Street forge, newspaper seller Harry Huxtable under County Club arches, Salvatore Polino with his barrel organ and monkey, Enterprise bus conductor Bargee Lee, Mr. Woods with a long pole for opening the glass doors of our street lamps and deftly causing the pilot light to ignite the gas mantles, and Mr. Gamble, the one-armed ticket inspector, who despite his handicap could jump on and off morning buses with surprising dexterity.
From P. Rogers of Wootton. I felt I needed to write regarding St Mary's, as we hear so much which is negative about our hospital, the NHS and our doctors. Recently, over 6 weeks, it was my privilege to be cared for at St Mary's. The doctors, nurses and ward staff and in ICU were exceptional. Having said that, the other wards and staff cope incredibly well under pressure from patient numbers. Apart from the surgeons, where your life is in their hands, their role must be one of the hardest. You cannot help but feel vulnerable while you're in hospital, so even a smile or kind words were such a reassurance. All the staff at St Mary's, theirs is so much more than just a job of work. They have capabilities of mending lives. I am also blessed with the care and compassion of my district nurses, an excellent doctor's surgery where, once more, they are under so much pressure.
And now we have looking back. 100 years ago, March the 30th, 1918, the Daily Express praised Shanklin's enterprising and successful toy-making industry as a home industry that was flourishing. Lodging house keepers who found it difficult to secure employment in the off-season were busy making attractive rag dolls. Islanders mourned the death of Mr. H.G. Nutt of Seaview, who died suddenly. The social club sent tributes following Mr. Nutt's role as founder of the club, as well as the vocal members of the Ryde Conservative Club and Seaview Volunteers.
75 years ago, March the 27th, 1943. An automatic fire alarm, which the owner did not know existed, saved Afton Manor Freshwater from a huge amount of damage. A pump from Freshwater Fire Station arrived at the scene only 3 minutes after the fire's discovery. Domestic staff attacked the fire with extinguishers, and enough water was available from the house to extinguish the main fire on the roof. A meeting was held at the Unity Hall, Newport, attended by former residents of the Channel Islands as well as Isle of Wight residents. It was said when people from occupied Jersey and Guernsey were deported to Germany, there were more than 200 inquiries from people on the Isle of Wight about relatives and friends. It was agreed to form a society to help refugees from the Channel Islands and the Isle of Wight.
And 50 years ago, March the 22nd, 1968, the new headquarters of the Isle of Wight Society for the Aid of the Physically Handicapped opened in St James's Street, Newport. The building provided a nucleus for the administration of the society and a central point for storage and meetings. President of the society, Mr Mark Woodnut, thanked the chairman, Mr G Gold, for the project's success. And the first of 4 Islander aircraft to reach Australia for use there was granted a certificate of airworthiness. Manufacturer Britain Norman hoped for many more orders to follow.
25 years ago, March the 26th, 1993. An island woman's relief following a hip replacement surgery, for which she paid out more than £4,000 of her life savings, turned to anger when she discovered fellow patients on the mainland were having the same operation covered by the NHS. This followed many cases of islanders having to wait more than a year to receive the same treatment those on the mainland received instantly. A 93-year-old pensioner was tied up and robbed in his home in Wootton, making him the 3rd elderly target in 2 weeks. 2 burglars burst into the man's bedroom before ransacking the room and making off with nearly £200 in cash.
And 10 years ago, March the 28th, 2008, an heroic island soldier who went to the aid of 2 colleagues injured by a roadside bomb in Iraq was commended for his bravery. Trooper Adam Simler of Newport was commended for his selfless actions under enemy fire at a ceremony in Hampshire, where he was presented with a certificate and a pin to attach to his Iraq medal. He told the county press he was only doing his job. And Debs Goodenough, who tended the Osborne House gardens for a decade, was appointed head gardener for the Prince of Wales's Highgrove estate, Gloucestershire. A spokesperson from Osborne House said Debs had provided a benchmark of excellence in horticultural management and maintenance.
And now more on Wight memories. Headlined, Decade in the Arctic spawns bestseller. When Duncan Pryde died in Cowes in 1997, aged 60, Not many people knew he was a best-selling author. Along with his wife Dawn, he'd run a newsagent shop in Birmingham Road called Pride of Cows. But if you had time to chat, he would tell you about the years he lived with the Eskimos in the Canadian far north, the subject of his only book, Nunaga, 10 Years of Eskimo Life. The Arctic was his favourite topic of conversation, and it was no accident he lived at 6 Arctic Road. It all began in 1955 when Duncan, bored witless as his job in Singer's sewing machine factory in his native Clydebank near Glasgow, saw the advert in the Sunday Post that forever changed his life. Fur traders wanted for the far north, single, ambitious, self-reliant young men wanted for the far north of Canada, must be prepared to live in isolation, willing to learn native languages, salary $135 per month. He was hired, and in short order he shipped out to Montreal. He spent his first 2 years with the company living among the Cree and Ojibwe Indians in northern Ontario and Manitoba. But he was soon complaining to his bosses. He found these postings too soft. Eventually he got moved even further north, and then this is when his life with the Eskimos began. He found himself remarkably well suited to the lifestyle, harsh as it was, and travelled out on the land with his Eskimo friends every chance he got, learning their culture and language, living as one of them. In time he became a sort of white Eskimo, and often ventured out in the depths of winter to travel many hundreds of miles alone by dog sled, building and living in snow houses as he went. His expertise in all of this led an Edmonton publisher to persuade him to write a book.
To everyone's great surprise, it quickly became an international bestseller. But in the meantime, Duncan voted into political office in the Northwest Territories in 1969, had moved to the suburbs of metropolitan Yellowknife. Later on, he took a teaching job in the newly opened Inupiat University in Barrow, Alaska. Such were his skills in the various dialects of Inkutitut and Inupiat, the languages of North America's Inuit people. In 1978, he moved back to the United Kingdom, living at first in Folkestone, where he met and married Dawn. The couple then moved to Cowes to foster Duncan's interest in sailing and started up their newsagent's business. Sadly, however, health problems in his late 50s cut his life short. Duncan's book, Nanajga, 10 Years of Eskimo Life, is still in print and available online from Ellen Publishers Limited, 61 Express Market, London EC1R 4QL. Laura Clark, an American author of Tucson, Arizona, is writing a biography of Duncan Pryde. She would like to get in touch with anyone in the Isle of Wight who remembers Duncan and can share their memories of him. To contact Laura, email ljc51@aol.com.
Now for our opinion columns, my view. From Malcolm Mime, why I'm still as politically neutral as ever. My Friday morning ritual has been the same for as long as I can remember. I head to my local newsagent, buy a copy of the county press, and then spend the next half an hour with my morning brew, reading the following: sport, weekender, births, marriages, deaths, and finally the letters to the editor. I carried out this usual ritual of mine on Friday, March the 2nd, which meant I caught up on the struggles of Newport Football Club, read about the indoor cricket, took in the views of my fellow weekender columnists, saw who had been hatched, matched and dispatched, and then finished off by seeing who was having a moan and about what. To my surprise, I discovered the subject matter of one of the letters was little old me. The letter in question was from a Danny McMeechan of Ventnor, who had taken exception to me calling the Tories the selfish party in my February column, and was demanding that I justify my statement. Mr. McMeacham, who quite clearly from the content of his letter is a true blue Tory, also requested I divulge which political party I support. As I wrote in my column last June, I didn't vote in the general election, as I was simply unable to find a party who I felt represented me. But as Mr. McMeacham has asked, I have now taken a fresh look at each of the main political parties and offer up this brief resume of how I see them all, both nationally and locally. Labour, nationally. No clear view on Brexit, no clear view on whether they want to represent the working class or try and be more central like they were under Tony Blair. Unelectable leader in Jeremy Corbyn. I actually quite like Corbyn, but would I trust him to run the country? No. Locally, in Julian Critchley, they seem to have a good local candidate, but while the National Party remain at sixes and sevens, he will remain unelectably locally. Liberal Democrats, nationally, only seem to be interested in reversing Brexit. Wishy-washy. Locally, lack of any sort of leadership, in the wilderness. Green Party, nationally, utopian dreamers. Locally, ditto. I do love the passion of Vix Lothian, but however good she is, ultimately the Greens' policy make her unelectable.
UKIP, nationally dead, locally dead. And finally, I get to Mr. McMeacham's beloved Tories, and also get to explain why I referred to them as the selfish party. Conservative, nationally, messing up on Brexit and instilling no confidence in Theresa May. The Tories have the most undynamic and uncharismatic party they have ever had. The Tory party continued to cut, leaving those most vulnerable in society in desperate measures, hence my selfish party comment. Locally, Captain Bob nods his head in support of local concerns, but then does whatever he is told to do by his leaders in Westminster. The recent cuts on free school meals being a prime example. Seems to be more concerned with the Russian issues from local issues. As for our local Tory council, it will be judged on whether or not it manages to get 25% of schools to an Ofsted rating of outstanding, as promised by Barbara Stewart prior to the local elections. Mr. McMeacham's letter also accused me of making political statements, but I'm not quite sure on whose behalf I might be making them. I remain, as ever, politically neutral, although I dream of the day when I find someone worthy of my support.
And now from Rebecca Roncoroni. What, not why, is the way forward? I read an interesting article the other day. It talked about the importance of not asking why, but what, in framing our responses to things. It stated that asking why something happened or is happening can and does lead to a recriminatory approach to problem solving. By asking what happened, what do you want to do about it, you're laying the groundwork for recovering and taking charge of a situation rather than potentially becoming a victim of it. Could such a simple change of words help? I'm cynical of a one-size-fits-all approach to anything. Any sentient human being is by their very nature unpredictable. One man's meat is another man's poison. However, I decided to put this approach to the test. Just before the weekend, I developed a dental abscess. Any sensible person would have called the dentist on Friday and gone for emergency treatment. Not me. My completely illogical fear stopped me from making that call. "Why won't you call the dentist?" my exasperated other half said. I told him why. I knew why. Several horrible experiences, both as a child and adult, had culminated in a phobia, a completely illogical amount of fear towards a necessary vital part of healthcare. Knowing why didn't help in any way. It didn't didn't get rid of the terror, nor did it reduce my pain in any way or cure the abscess. Instead, the pain got worse. I read the article and asked myself, what? What was I feeling? Extreme pain. What did I want? The pain to go away. What could I do about it? Call in the experts and woman up. It took until Monday afternoon to reach the tipping point whereby the agony overrode that fear. By Tuesday 8 a.m, when I was in the dentist's chair, I was ready to submit. By this time, the abscess had spread to 2 teeth. One was extracted, the other has been left with a hope and prayer that it will recover. A high price to pay. Could we apply this to everything that affects our lives? We know why our council tax is rising, and the NHS, alongside all the other public services, is failing. We know central government is starving them of funds.
We know that we are not happy about it. Indeed, when it comes to care of our sick and vulnerable, I think it's safe to say we are sickened by it. So what do we want? What can we do about it? What are we prepared to do about it? At what point do we as an island, as a society, say, enough? This is not what we want. What do we have to do? It's an interesting way of framing things, and surely far more valuable to us than constant re-examination of why. Why is useful to know, but what is the first step towards forward in resolution.
And now for Behind the News by Laurie Little. Film director Sue Clayton discusses her work on the child asylum issue. Shocked by what she saw in the Calais jungle, film director Sue Clayton cancelled everything and dedicated the next year to filming what she saw. Sue, who spent 30 years visiting the island and now lives in St Helens, booked into a cheap bed and breakfast in Calais, started crowdfunding and within 3 days had enough money pledged to get a film crew there. The result was Calais Children, A Case to Answer, which has since had more than 100 screenings and opened on the island recently at a screening by Ryde Film Club. It's due to be shown in Ventnor and Key Arts soon. Sue documented how, as the Calais jungle was set to be razed to the ground in October 2016, after the Brexit vote, there were more than 1,900 unaccompanied minors stranded there, many of whom had a legal case to enter the UK. Sue was part of a group which tried to census the children to get to the bottom of how many there were, fought to get them recognised and their cases heard. But with the camp soon to go up in flames, it became a race against time. What happened to them next, Sue describes as a shameful indictment of the UK's human rights record, as the young people suffered delays, denials and dismissal from the UK government and were left abandoned in France with no support at all. Her film follows the young people since they left the jungle and Sue's legal challenge to the Home Office's actions through the High Court earlier this year, a fight which is ongoing. Who is Sue Clayton? Formerly London-based and now gradually spending more and more times at her St Helens Bolt Hall, Sue has been producing and directing films for more than 30 years. Her debut feature film, The Song of the Shirt, on women in the garment trades, was distributed globally. She made a number of award-winning documentaries for Channel 4 and Central Television, including the Commodities series, Turning Japanese, How to Survive Lifestyle, and Theme Park Britons. She then went into fiction film writing and directing, making, among others, Heart Songs, The Last Crop, and The Disappearance of Finbar, starring Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, and distributed by Buena Vista International.
Her films have all won international awards, including at BAFTA, Madrid Film Festival, Tokyo Film Festival, Midnight Sun Film Festival, New York Film Festival, Philadelphia World Film Festival, Seattle Film Festival, Palm Springs Film Festival, and many others. Sue has worked on the child asylum issue for 15 years. She made an award-winning film on a related topic, Hamildulla, The Road Home, where she gave a camera to a refugee boy forcibly removed to Afghanistan from the UK when he was 18. The film was distributed internationally and was submitted to the Select Committee on Child Refugees and Asylum Seekers in 2013. It has also been requested regularly as evidence in court cases, appealing the forced removal of similar cases. She is called as an expert witness on such removals, particularly those in Afghanistan. As a professor at the University of London, she was also co-investigator on a 3-year Equality and Human Rights Commission-funded project called Uncertain Journeys, exploring the challenges facing separated young people. She spent a year working full-time on the Calais issue as a journalist, filmmaker and academic. While making her films, she has featured regularly on the national news. She said, "When I first visited the Calais jungle refugee camp in October 2016, I was deeply shocked. Here were hundreds, even thousands of lone children and young people living in chaotic and dangerous camps. They were in dirty, ripped tents and lean-tos, subject to violence, predators and nightly attacks from armed police. It seemed unbelievable. These young people could be suffering, some dying here in Western Europe, a stone's throw from the cafes and boulevards of Calais and just a mile from the UK border, in conditions much worse than camps in war zones. At first, she reported the issue as a consultant for ITV and Channel 4, but she was so shocked that she began her own filming and got to know the young people. One of the worst experiences was a visit to the cemetery in Calais to see the rows of unmarked graves with only numbers on them. These were all the young people who died trying to get in trucks and lorries to get out of that jungle. When Sue discovered the children may have had legal right to be safe in the UK, her emotions were torn between care and sympathy for them and helpless anger about their suffering. Often documentaries are dangerous to film. This one certainly was. She explained, the French riot police attacked the jungle most nights with tear gas and by charging in and using their weapons. In the dark, with no NGOs or officials there, a camp of 10,000 threatened people is not safe for anyone, be it the kids or even us as a crew. I was attacked twice, and I often felt unsafe, but as a director I didn't want to look weak. In the end, this film was made, not only as a movie for people to watch, but also as a witness statement to take to the United Kingdom courts as we pursue our case to get these kids to safety. The film needed to be the perfect balance between an empathetic account of them and their lives and a razor-sharp indictment of the government's position. I know people respond to the emotion. Whether we have done enough to win in court, that is our next step. The film is being screened in Parliament in April and in the High Court itself as evidence to save the futures of these children.
Now for what's on. Action on hearing loss will be at the Orchard House Care Centre, Fairley Road, Newport, between 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. next Thursday for its monthly drop-in and coffee morning. No appointment is necessary. For more information, call 529 533.
And Action on Hearing Loss again has cancelled its monthly drop-in at Brystone Methodist Church on Tuesday due to the church's unavailability. It will resume as usual next month. There will be a drop-in at Freshwater Methodist Church, Brookside Road, on Thursday, April the 12th, between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. For more information on this, call 529 533.
And again on Action on Hearing Loss, it will not be at Ryde Tower House Surgery in April due to it falling on Easter Monday. For an alternative drop-in clinic, call in 529 533.
And now we have some information on Italian sax player at Yarmouth Jazz Fest. Italian saxophonist Tommaso Starace will be playing with the Nick Page Quartet at the Royal Solent Yacht Club's Jazz Weekend next Saturday and Sunday, April the 7th and 8th. Tommaso, who has worked with Oscar-winning film composer Dario Marianelli, joins Top Island jazz musicians Nick, John Thorne and Ken Black at 8 p.m. on Saturday. At noon on Sunday, Jim, John, Ben Branca and Jose Lito will perform with the Latin Quartet. Lunch is available from 1 p.m. and the quartet's second set starts at 2 p.m. The weekend is opened by a free performance by Nick, solo guitar and singer, in the bar starting at 6 p.m. on Saturday. The weekend is open to non-Royal Solent Yacht Club members. Saturday night is £12 for jazz only and £20 with supper. Sunday lunchtime is £5 jazz only and £18 including roast dinner. For tickets, visit www.royalsolent.org or ring 760 256.
There will be a prostate cancer evening at Newport Football Ground on Thursday, 19th of April. The evening is sponsored by the Isle of Wight Prostate Cancer Support Group. The Isle of Wight has the highest incidence of prostate cancer in Great Britain. Is prostate cancer a concern to you or one of your family? If so, why not come along to an evening of information sharing and fundraising? The evening consists of Prostate Cancer Support Group AGM from 6:15 to 7 p.m, information sharing from 7 p.m. to 7:45 p.m, including the chance to speak to those who have experienced prostate cancer on a one-to-one basis, and also there will be information stalls on relevant subjects. Please consider coming along. You will be very welcome.
And Errol heads to Wolverton. The 8th annual Wolverton Folk and Blues Fair will take place in the stunning grounds of Wolverton Manor, Shorewell, in May. After a sellout launch in 2011, the festival has gained momentum with fantastic bands and artists each year. The latest names to be announced are top UK blues band the Errol Linton Band and award-winning folk supergroup the Gigantics. 3 times winner of Blues Harp Player of the Year, Errol Linton and his band play eclectic British blues but with a nod to his Caribbean heritage.
Shrewsbury Band in concert. Shrewsbury Brass Band will play at venues across the island over the Easter weekend. The band has a free concert on Saturday at 2 p.m. at Ryde Methodist Church. This will be followed by a joint concert, Rejoice, with the Undercliff Singers at St Catherine's Church, Ventnor at 7 p.m. On Sunday, after an Easter Sunday service at St Catherine's at 10:45, the band will perform at Ventnor Botanic Garden outside Edulis Restaurant from 1 p.m. The band will then perform a pre-dinner concert between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. at the Trouville Hotel, Sandown. Band Secretary Wendy Jones said, "Some members of the band have relatives on the island. The evening concert at St Catherine's Church is in memory of a family member, Roy Dicker, who sadly recently passed away and was a member of the Undercliff Singers."
And the Newport Isle of Wight Jazz Weekend is 31st of May to the 3rd of June 2018. BBC Big Band, Claire Martin, Derek Nash, Skelton, Skinner, All Stars, Picanti, Karen Sharp, Quartet and so forth. Tickets on sale at the Isle of Wight County Press are now available.
Legendary playlist for Rock for Heroes gig. The classic sounds of artists such as Dire Straits, Status Quo, David Bowie and Madonna are coming to the island next month. The Help for Heroes charity which helps injured servicemen, is staging a Rock for Heroes event at the Medina Theatre on Friday, April the 20th. The show features music performed by a full live rock band, including songs by a galaxy of stars including Spandau Ballet, Bryan Adams, Elton John and many more. Show promoters say, "This isn't a tribute act, this is simply paying tribute the best way we can to the legends in new music."
And band plays for 3 charities. Island residents are set for an arresting time next month. The band of the Hampshire Constabulary are visiting the Isle of Wight on Sunday, April 15th, when they will be staging a concert at All Saints Church Ryde. They will be supporting 3 local charities, the church itself, the Isle of Wight Scout Jamboree Unit and Citizens Advice Isle of Wight. The programme suits all ages and will start at 2:30 p.m. with refreshments available.
And that's all from us today. Happy Easter to all.
This is from Barry. I hope you have a very nice Easter, and that the snow that was being threatened will not materialise.
And from Linda as well, I second that.
This is the BBC.
This is InTouch, the magazine programme for people like me who are blind or partially sighted. I'm Peter Wight. Thanks for downloading this week's edition. Good evening. Tonight, you've heard the headlines and the hype, but just who could really benefit from stem cell eye surgery and when? And we say goodbye to the woman who can justly claim to have defined the purpose of InTouch.
The second programme I did was based on a very interesting article I read in an American journal on blindness about something called a long cane, with which people were taught to move about safely. In this country at that time, there was only the symbol cane or guide dogs, who obviously had a training programme, but nobody taught anybody what to do with a white cane. I put this out, and the very first result was a very sharp retort from the Royal National Institute of the Blind. How dare we give information about something which hadn't been tried and tested here? And I thought to myself, well, that's interesting. I wonder how different American blind people are from English ones.
Tina Heschel, who produced InTouch for almost 30 years, and who sadly died last Sunday. More from and about Tina later in the programme. But first, for around a decade, we've been hearing about the potential of stem cell surgery to restore some sight for people with certain forms of eye disease. In particular, trials have been taking place to apply the technology to patients with macular disease. MD affects between 600,000 and 700,000 people in the United Kingdom. The macula is the part of the eye which gives us our central vision, and the results of the latest trials on just 2 patients do indeed seem to be encouraging, with real improvements in their ability to read. The problem is with the way such advances are reported, and it's difficult to distinguish fact from fiction and legitimate optimism from wild exaggeration. So what do these latest trials really tell us that we didn't know already? And who can hope to benefit and when? I've been talking with Professor Pete Coffey of University College London, who's been coordinating this research from the start.
The question everyone wants to know, not just about therapies for the eye, but regenerative medicine overall, is can we see a restoration in that person's ability? The answer in this case is yes, it stops those people from going blind. And in fact, it has actually improved their vision to a point where they're now reading.
What can the experience of 2 people tell you when there are thousands of sufferers?
Yes, so even though there's only 2 patients, what can we learn from this is huge. They were very severe cases. They were treated initially, but those treatments weren't working. And with that, we know the larger population of age-related macular degeneration, which is about 600 to 700,000 patients. We could really scale this up. It's not huge in terms of what needs to be done in scaling it up for those patients. And therefore, we should be able to treat a large number of patients, probably within specific centres, so maybe Moorfields, Manchester, Liverpool.
So who can actually benefit from this treatment? Because there's a wide variety of macular disease. Who can benefit and to what extent?
So the first groups we've looked at, or the first group within the AMD population, are these patients who suffer from very severe bleeds, in which the drugs which are injected into the back of the eye don't work. Typically, those drugs would stop the bleed, the eye would be stabilised, and those patients would have stable vision from that point. There is a large group of patients within that who have very severe bleeds, which are not treatable with those injections. And they are probably the first group of patients who could benefit. So that is about a good 7% of the population of AMD. So it's not small.
So that is 70 or so thousand?
Yeah, you could say that.
Is that reasonably? So that's a lot of people. And what would the timescale be?
That is always, as you know, the big question. And we now have these patients, they've gone 2.5 years now. The report was the 1 year findings. The 2.5 years are the same. They're still able to see and they're still reading. So the issue is, how fast can we get it scaled up, and what is called a pivotal trial. And our reckoning on that, as ever, is this 3 to 5 year period. We are in discussions with the regulators. I've had some initial discussions to see whether we can accelerate it. There are pathways in which you can accelerate that if there aren't any therapies there already.
And what is stopping it? What is slowing it down? Because it's very frustrating for people to hear that there is a treatment, that you've got confidence in it, but they can't have it, not yet.
I wouldn't say it's slowing down. It's slowed down. It's a case of there is this regulatory pathway. And I think that's where the frustration comes, which is how long it takes to get through that process. And that's why there are these possibilities of acceleration if there are, and if there is, a good case for a therapeutic to be moved into the clinics quicker with the regulators.
Just to be clear, so that people who are listening to this perhaps are hearing terms that they understand that applies to them, are we talking still largely about people with what's known as wet AMD?
No, we're also, we will be initiating a dry trial as well. So the reason we went in the wet wasn't for the wet population, it was to show that we could have efficacy straight away, which we have shown. If we'd actually gone into the dry population as a trial there, we would have had to have gone in what's called end stage, so we wouldn't have had the information as to saving vision, whereas we have it now with doing the wet. But it is applicable to wet and dry, and in fact dry is a much larger population, and therefore that's the one we really want to get in treated.
I mean, the problem with this always is the amount of excitement that it generates and the amount of hope that it generates. I mean, if somebody thinks, having listened to you, you know, I'm a candidate for this, is there anything they can do?
And sadly, the answer to that has to be no. These are regulated trials, so I can't determine who goes on these trials.
Now, you're using stem cells, and this, of course, has been known for some time. But just explain, in the context of the eye, where are you taking these stem cells from?
So these are stem cells which are derived as embryonic stem cells. They come from what's called a 5-day-old blastocyst, which is very technical. But basically, it's just the egg and the sperm, and then within 5 days, a little blob of cells is formed, which can make every single cell in our bodies. So it's just literally a pinhead of cells after 5 days, but that pinhead of cells is then made into a stem cell, an embryonic stem cell. And from there, we turn those stem cells into the eye cell we want.
How do you regard this kind of publicity? Because you know because you talk to patients, you know what hopes people hold and how they feel about it. I wonder whether you feel ambivalent about the way this publicity is often handled.
Not ambivalent, no. I was rather surprised by some of the headlines, not least one which was front page and started with the word miracle. I wouldn't say it's a miracle. There's been a lot of hard work in actually producing this therapeutic. So some of the language which is used by, the press can be very inflammatory.
Can you do anything to damp that down? I mean,
we have tried substantially. We rewrite press releases that some of the papers actually send to us. I mean, sometimes we're fortunate that we get an opportunity to comment, but obviously some of the papers don't give us that opportunity.
So just finally, without hopefully falling into our own trap, who are the people who you could say, this is the profile of someone who could benefit from this, but I can't make promises about when?
So these are people who are in a difficult position in that they suffer from wet age-related macular degeneration, and they have very bad bleeds which cannot be treated by the current treatment, which is injections into the back of the eye. But that window is literally 6 weeks for us to actually give you a therapeutic. And that 6 weeks for us will not start until the end of this year.
At the earliest.
At the earliest.
Professor Pete Coffey. Well, Cathy Yelf is CEO of the Macular Society. That's a support group for thousands of people with a variety of forms of macular disease. When this kind of publicity occurs, the Society is in the front line, and it's them to whom people turn with their many questions. I asked Cathy Yelf how she reacted to these latest developments.
It's very important to note that this is 2 patients and it is a very early stage trial, and many things can go wrong between this point of success and actually getting this as a therapy and a treatment to real patients down the line. But having said that, there is no doubt that this is a remarkable achievement and it is a very exciting piece of news.
But how do you manage that as an organisation? Because clearly people will want to know, what does this mean? What does this mean to me? Am I going to have some sort of cure at some point?
We hope, of course, that will prove to be the case. I think people do understand that early stage clinical trials are not the same as having a treatment round the corner, but you cannot get any treatment for patients without these early stage successes. And I think people do understand that. But on the other hand, it is great news for patients who do want to have some sense of movement forward in the research and an idea that maybe one day there will be a cure for macular degeneration. I think we all hope that, and we all work very hard to try to make that a reality by funding the research that we fund. Of course, we did fund the very early stages of this piece of research.
Do you see this as an opportunity, if you like? Do you use it as an opportunity to tell people who do start to realise this isn't going to be for me, the things that they actually can do, the things you can do to maximise their eye health?
Well, yes, of course, and there are things that people can do. Clearly, there is a treatment for wet AMD now, which will slow down the progress of the disease, and provided that people are diagnosed with suspected wet AMD promptly, and they are sent promptly to hospital and treated promptly when they get there, then many of these patients will have very good outcomes, as they say. They will retain their vision for much, much longer, perhaps forever. For dry AMD patients, then of course there are lifestyle advice that's given. So, stop smoking. If you smoke, it's very, very bad for your eyes. Eat a healthy diet with lots of green leafy vegetables. We say to everybody, eat kale. It's very, very good for your eyes. Keep your weight down and maintain a healthy blood pressure and so on. So there are things. Sometimes people take nutritional supplements as well, although they are controversial. But there are things that people can do for themselves. And it's really important, actually, that people don't feel that it's hopeless and nothing can be done for them. That's absolutely not true. There are lots of things that people can do for themselves, and they can access some treatments as well, and that's very important.
Cathy Yelf, CEO of the Macular Society. Well, as always, InTouch will do its very best to keep you properly informed about what's going on. There'll be more on our action line, which you can call on 0800 044 044 for 24 hours after this programme. You can email InTouch at bbc.co.uk, or if you're able, you can go to our website, from where you can also download tonight's programme. Putting information directly into the hands of visually impaired people has always been the aim of InTouch, and no one did more to establish that principle than its producer of 30 years, Thina Heschel. Sadly, Thina died last Sunday, aged 83. But she leaves a legacy which she very deliberately fostered. When InTouch celebrated its 50th anniversary in 2011 with an hour-long special, Thina, who normally avoided publicity for herself, explained to our live audience how she had approached producing a programme for blind and partially sighted people.
Because I had been a journalist before I became a BBC producer, I knew the thing to do if you had a new subject was to read about it. So off I went and got hold of everything I could read, and here I landed into my first controversy. The second programme I did was based on a very interesting article I read in an American journal on blindness about something called a long cane, with which people were taught to move about safely. In this country at that time, there was only the symbol cane or guide dogs, who obviously had a training programme, but nobody taught anybody what to do with a white cane. I put this out, and the very first result was a very sharp retort from the Royal National Institute of the Blind. How dare we give information about something which hadn't been tried and tested here? I thought to myself, well, that's interesting. I wonder how different American blind people are from English ones. And nothing daunted, I went on to do another programme about something called low vision aids, which I knew as magnifiers. And I sent off one of our reporters to find out about them and the variety that there was. This went out and had two immediate results. Hundreds and hundreds, I do not exaggerate, letters from blind and partially sighted people all over the country thanking us for telling them about this equipment that had never been told about, and a furious fusillade from, I think, the College of Ophthalmologists, or it might have been Moorfields, about how dare we mention this, because this was not something for lay people to discuss. It would be for ophthalmologists who never referred people, because it was optometrists and not ophthalmologists who knew about it. So that was the beginning of my first lesson, that it was for us to give people the information with which they could then help themselves. And if that meant pressing the professionals, too bad, that was our job.
Well, Thina, not being visually impaired herself, believed implicitly that when it came to blindness and partial sight, it was the people living with it that were the real experts. And that's why she encouraged so many of us to become involved with the programme and help to set its agenda. I owe her an enormous debt, as do current producer Cheryl Gabriel and current editor Eleanor Garland, both visually impaired. Among her last recruits as producer is Gary O'Donoghue, now a permanent fixture on radio and television as a BBC foreign correspondent based in Washington. He recorded these impressions of Thina for us.
I first met Thina when I was a student, and I was doing bits of work experience for the BBC in my vacations from university. And Thina was the first ever person to allow me on air on Radio 4 when I was 21 years old. She commissioned me to do a package. She was also very generous in making sure I learnt how to edit on 1/4-inch tape before the days of digital, literally cutting bits of tape together to do our edits. She sent me off for training for that. She really was a true inspiration. She was a mentor to a number of blind reporters. She believed that we were able to do it at a time when many believed we weren't able to do it, and she championed our cause. She could also be very tough. I do remember her sending me down to, I think it was Wimbledon in southwest London, to do an interview on one occasion with a Ewer, which were these very heavy reel-to-reel tape recorders we used to record interviews on at the time. And I came back and I hadn't recorded it. It hadn't recorded. And I said to her that this had happened, and there was a long, long pause. And she said, well, you better ring them up and tell them you're coming back again to do it again. And I didn't make that mistake again. I've got her to thank for so much in terms of my career, certainly, and others I know do too. She encouraged us to go further. She pushed us into the wider broadcasting world as well. And really, in that sense, she was before her time. She was a fantastic person to work for, always fair, always rigorous, sound editorially, and incredibly incredibly positive about one's work. She'll be missed very, very much.
Gary O'Donoghue, remembering InTouch's definitive producer, Thina Heschel. It was a privilege to have known her. From me, Peter Wight, Cheryl Gabriel and the team, goodbye.